I want to do a small little video on how easy it is to actually turbocharge a Honda. I'm always being asked questions like, can my car be done? Can this be done? There's a lot of different ways to go about doing it. Depending on your budget and your skill level. I'm going to show you today how to do a B18C swap in a Civic hatch without taking the motor out, without doing any machine work to the motor. I'm going to be setting it up with the potential to go to 500 horsepower at the wheels. I chose a complete turbo kit rather than piecing together. I also am going with these B-Series Viteras, as they become known. They're a cast piston, not an expensive forged piston. They got a real fat upper ringland. The aluminum they're made out of is a proprietary mix that's pretty strong. It's not an OEM mixture. And I'm also going to end up going here with the Eagle rods. By using these pistons and these rods, the B18C will be capable of supporting. The sleeves become the next factor, and they're hit or miss. 500 is usually considered about the roundabout safe number. Some people go a little under, some people go a little over. My goal with this car is only going to be somewhere in the low to mid 400 range. That's what I parred to piece together everything to be able to meet that goal. You could always go on stock internals and just put a turbo kit on it, and with the B18C you're limited then only to about 350 is considered about the safe average. That's with ARP head studs being the only upgrade. I will be also putting ARP head studs in this. They're over on the other table. So that's what I'll do here. The video isn't going to show you how to do the nuts and bolts of it. It'll just show you the steps that I've taken. It's going to assume that you have mechanical skill of your own or have a friend or somebody to help you with that part. Should be a pretty interesting video. Step one is draining the coolant and the oil. Next step, now that you have your coolant and oil drained, would be to remove the radiator and the exhaust manifold. I've gone ahead and also taken off the bumper. Got that out of the way. Next step is to start disconnecting and unhooking everything for being able to lift the head and the intake off of the block. So I'll go ahead and start doing that stuff right now. Alright, now that everything's unhooked that goes to the head and the intake, I went ahead and skipped ahead here and took the intake off. So the next step will be to remove the head. Get that out of the way. Now we can start pulling the timing cover, valve cover, and everything that's may still be connected over there as far as the distributor wires, so we can start getting ready to pull the head. I should mention that you can actually pull the head and the intake as one. If you get underneath there and get everything unhooked, it's not that hard. And in fact, if you're not upgrading your intake from the factory one to an aftermarket one, your best bet's to leave it on. Then you're not stuck scraping that impossibly hard to get off a gasket and the expense of having to put a new gasket in. So only take off the intake if you plan on swapping it for an aftermarket one. I'm going to get ready to start pulling the head now, and we'll pick up for after that. Okay, now we have the head off. It's pretty much all we really have to do from at the top for now. Next step is to get underneath, get the car in the air, drop the oil pan, get the girdle and the connecting rod caps off, so we can push the stock rods and pistons up out of the top. So to recap, at this point we have removed the exhaust manifold, drained out the oil, the water or coolant, removed the front bumper, pulled the intake and head, pretty much got everything out of our way so we can get the pistons and rods up and out, and that'll be our next step. Alright, once you drop the oil pan on a B18C, you're going to have to remove oil pickup tube, and then there's also a windage tray. And then they also have something a little different than some other makes, but the Hondas all also get a girdle as the main caps for the center. And as you see, I can get the first rod and the last rod, but to get the middle two, you have to remove the girdle. The girdle also doubles as the main caps for the crank, connects right to them, so those will need to be retorqued to spec once done. So I'm going to go ahead and take that off and pull the pistons and rods out now. Once you loosen up the connecting rod main cap, I use something soft like a plastic hammer handle, and I'll usually tap up on the rod bolt until it pops up out. And then if you get it popped out high enough, that one's not high enough yet, it's still catching on a little lip. Sometimes there's a little lip from the factory at the very top, and you may have to push up on it more than once. That should pop out. There we go. And you just lift it right out like that. Assemble them back together. Good time to check your bearings. These bearings all look really good. Even the mains that I looked at here in the girdle, they're all nice and silver yet. One has a couple fine scratches from some dirt in the oil, but the bearings look good. So I will obviously be replacing the connecting rod bearings because I did get fresh ones with the new rods, but I'm going to leave the crank ones alone. They don't show any abnormal wear. So I'm going to finish pulling these out, and we'll go to the next step. Okay, now all the pistons are out. The next step is going to be to investigate your cylinder walls. Look for any deep scratches, anything that may look out of the ordinary. These ones look really good yet. I can still see the original cross hatch. There's no scratches. So more than likely the reason my engine was burning oil and smoking was probably just due to high mileage on the rings. The rings themselves were probably just wore. So what I'm going to do now, the next step, is I'm going to use some carb cleaner and some clean rags. I'm going to clean up these cylinder walls, make them nice and clean and dry, and get them ready for the glaze breaker. See, when you put a lot of miles on a cylinder wall, even though you can still see the cross hatch, it's pretty freaking smooth. It's got a glaze built on it. So I want to run a glaze breaker, some people call it a honer, through these to give the new rings on my fresh pistons something to seat against to break them in. So that's the next step. Clean up, get all the oil and slippery stuff out of these cylinder walls. And then the trick is we got to seal off the bottom of the cylinder walls. The pistons don't go all the way to the bottom. When you look down in there, you'll see it's kind of hard to tell, but there's actually about an inch and a half down there where the piston rings don't go to. That part of the bottom don't need to be honed. So you move the crank kind of to the side so that none of your journals are directly straight down, and then we'll stick some clean rags down in there, and when we're running the honer down, those clean rags will catch any grit from the cylinder walls or the stones themselves and keep it from getting on the crank, so it'll be a little less clean up here when we're done. So that's the next step. Alright, it's time to hone the cylinders. You see I got this one here blocked off at the bottom, sealed nice and tight around the edges. I actually cut out a round piece of cardboard that was the exact size of the cylinder wall and wrapped a shop paper towel around it to make like a sealer, and shoved it down into the bottom. What you use is one of these or a berry bush, whichever kind you have access to. This is from AutoZone, it's like 30 bucks. you put a little WD-40 on these stones to lube them up, a little bit in the cylinder wall, lube it up, leave it on low speed, run it up and down in one direction for about 6 strokes, switch the speed direction to the other way, and do about another 6 strokes, and that's all it takes. It doesn't take much. The cylinder will be done after that. Show you a little bit of a before here. Get the light, and then we'll do a comparison to the cylinder wall next to it when we're done. Hard to focus in there, but it's pretty smooth. Alright, I'm going to get the hone in. Alright, we're down to the last cylinder wall. You see how shiny that one is? That one hasn't been done yet. You see these? Got like the cross-hatch scratches on them. That's from the honer. Getting rid of that shininess. Finish this one off here and I'll be ready to stick the pistons and rods in. And the next step is to assemble your pistons and rods. And then use your favorite spring compressor, ring compressor I mean, to install them. Make sure you put a little bit of oil on your cylinder walls and some assembly lube on the new bearings. Here you can see the difference between the B series Viteras with eagle rods versus the stock ones. Rods are quite a bit beefier. Pistons are a lot stronger and they're low compression. Okay, we got rods and pistons in, so from here out it's just a reverse of what we did to take it apart. So I'm going to put everything back together, and then the next update will be installing the turbo kit itself. Okay, here we are with the head all back together. In my case I won't have an intake till tomorrow, but this brings up a good point. To feed your turbo oil, you're going to want to get an oil feed line kit, and most of them will tap into the back where the oil pressure sending unit normally goes. Be like a T-fitting, and now's a good time to put that on because the intake's out of the way, or while the head's off if you do leave your intake on. Go ahead and put that in a while. That makes it a lot easier to get your stainless line ran to feed your oil. So that's where I'm at now. It's time to start putting the turbo kit on. And I'm going to start by putting on the manifold and the turbocharger. Okay, now that we have our turbo manifold and the turbo mounted, I also went ahead and hooked up the oil feed line. The next step is going to be to figure out the drain. Most kits will come with a bung that can be welded into the pan. You see we got the drain here already fastened in, but now I need to put the pan on and mock up the line. Then we're going to have to weld a bung to the side of the pan for the oil to drain out. So that's going to be the next step here, is to get that situated. Now that we have the exhaust manifold and the turbo mounted, feed line plumbed, drain line plumbed, we can start mocking up the exhaust to tie it in. Join it back there, and the next step will be the intercooler piping. Now that you have your exhaust pipe, downpipe, and wastegate connected, the next step is to start mocking up your intercooler piping. And getting that all connected up. And making some brackets to hang this intercooler. So that's the next step for now. Okay, the intercooler piping is mocked up. The intercooler's fastened. Most kits won't come with a way to fasten the intercooler to the car. You'll have to fabricate brackets. In this case it was just some spacers and some aluminum strip tabs on the bottom. The inside of the bumper will usually need trimmed, and that of course will be unique to each application. So the next step now is to get the bumper on there, make sure it all fits right. And if it does, go ahead and clamp down all these pipes. And here we are with the finished product. Just remember to top back off your antifreeze, fill up your engine with the oil. I am pretty much finished here. I just need to get some vacuum line for hooking up blow-off valve and wastegate, and an air filter that'll fit on the turbo. But other than that, I'm finished. This takes about 2 days, maybe 3, taking your time. I had some help for a couple items I did, so that helped me get along a little bit quicker. But it's pretty simple. There's no voodoo to it. For now, I'm running the stock injectors. I did upgrade the fuel pump. I forgot to mention that in the earlier video. About an hour ago, my friend stuck the fuel pump in the tank for me while I was doing other stuff. It's a Walbro 255, and that'll supply the fuel. For now, it's got the stock injectors put back in, but when we get to the dyno appointment, we'll swap those out for some larger ones. And that's it. 2 to 3 days. A well pieced together turbo kit. Some upgraded rods and pistons. No machine work. Never pulled the motor. And just got her done in a couple days. The other thing that I should mention too is when you go turbo is you should vent your crankcase pressure out. In the case of the B series, you have a nipple here. I'm going to end up putting a little filter on there. I'm not going to be going high boost or a lot of power, so I won't need a fancy catch can setup. Also, there's the black box. Those of you familiar with Hondas will know what I mean. There's a black box on the back of the block. I'm going to be venting the top of that. Instead of running a stock PVC setup, there won't be a PVC. It'll just be that black box vented to either a filter, or maybe I will make a small little catch can just to vent that to, just to let the crankcase pressure out. But other than that, that's it. Hope you find this video helpful. $413.9.